Well, it's only one of the most popular people in the history of Lakers Twitter and I can't talk today. And the real world will just say he is the editor in chief of Silver Screen and Roll. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Harrison Faigen on the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, buddy.
Hey guys, thanks for. You know, Mark, I was with you on the Lakers Twitter part, but then when you said Twitter as a whole, and then you went the whole world, now you're overselling me a little bit. Like the Lakers Twitter thing, I would have let it slide. Like that's, I'll cop to that. I'm very popular on Lakers Twitter.
Dude,
all the time.
I just love how you're worshipped, man. Everyone goes to you. You're the go-to guy now.
It goes the pettiest LA, Lakeshow yo, and then Harrison Faigen all the way up here. I think my hands have disappeared.
Oh my God, all right. Now now you're insulting me. You're putting petty ahead of me. This is unbelievable.
I put Harrison first. That was Zach. I'll give you his address later so you can keep
No,
his ass
that's
too.
what I did. No, if you saw my hands, it went up. So I had Harrison at the hut.
Okay, that was a nice save. I don't believe you, but that was it was a nice try.
We could check the tape.
Okay.
First question: can we really judge this team without Goran Dragic?
No, I don't think you can. I mean, I think that this team, you can never fully judge it until they have every player in the NBA currently and some that are not on the team, and they're playing against G leaguers, and then you can judge the team. But until then, it's like we say with literally every team around the NBA, you can never draw any conclusions about them until every single player on their roster is healthy. No team in NBA history has ever been judged until they're at full health. It's never happened. You guys can check the tape on that. It's like Kendrick Nunn is keeping this team from their full potential, okay? That was the guy, when people were talking about off-season moves, they're like, all right, well, the Lakers brought in the best player in the NBA in Kendrick Nunn. And so until he is on the roster and, ready to play, then you can't really judge the offseason. You can't judge this team. I am being facetious, but yeah, I just think that it's, it was getting the point in the season when I knew that the Lakers were in trouble was when they were talking about, they're like, oh, we can't seriously judge how this is going until Kendrick Nunn and Trevor Ariza are back. I'm like, okay, at that point, I'm like, all right, Nunn, that was your biggest off-season signing. You make the Westbrook trade. Nunn was your only kind of guy that you could go over the minimum to sign. So that's a meaningful player. I'll give you that one. But Trevor Ariza at 36 on the minimum, this is the guy we're waiting for. And then somehow he came back, so before Nunn, and Nunn may not play this year. And so, yeah, it's just been a crazy, crazy year.
So you're saying you saw this coming?
I'm not saying that I saw this degree of it, but I started to have a little bit of worries when they were talking about, 36-year-old Trevor Ariza as if he was the key to unlocking their defense. I'm like, guys, if you're building the team around 36-year-old Trevor Ariza that hasn't played a full season in 4 years, that was probably a mistake. But look, I'm not an NBA GM, so who am I to say that building your entire defense around 36-year-old Trevor Ariza is a bad idea?
Now, is it? I don't want to sound like I don't have any hope, because I actually do sort of have hope. Hear me out. I actually do think if the Lakers could get into the playoffs, which right now, as we know, is the play-in tournament, I do think if they're able to get everything straightened out, but hopefully by the end of the first round, they can actually make a dark horse run. I don't think they're going to win it all. I don't even think they're probably going to make it to the Western Conference Finals, but I do think they can make some upset and cause some shake into the league. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm with you in the sense of, I know this is it's almost hypocritical of me to say after I just laughed about the whole injury situation and the way that they were talking about it, but the reality is that we have not seen, as far as the big three guys, we have not seen them play that many games together, and I do think that this team is better than their record has been, better than they've shown on many of their worst nights. And if they play with the type of kind of energy and effort that they played against Golden State, I know everyone's done with moral victories. I'm not saying that was that's really a win because, you saw how hard they played. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that, if this team can get a little bit of health, play that hard every single night, they do have a chance to be much better than they've shown. I'm with you in that I'm kind of out on thinking that this team is a contender, barring, you never know, because we've seen every year, we talk about that every year we try to put an asterisk on the NBA Finals because some player gets unexpectedly hurt at the wrong time and their team loses. Last year, it was the Lakers who got not the benefit, but people were talking about, they maybe could have won it. They might have upset Phoenix. Like, I honestly feel like they would have beaten Phoenix if AD hadn't gotten hurt. But that's the reality. Yeah, it's real life. You don't get to turn injuries off. And so, if the Lakers get a little bit of injury luck, going their way instead of going against them for once, and they can get healthy and continue to kind of play the way that they were playing the other night, I'm with you. They have a shot to show to at least make some noise, give some other higher seed a tough series with the right matchup. Maybe they make it to the second round. But yeah, I'm not really in unless we see a massive sea change over these last 25 games. I'm out on thinking that they are a real legit title contender.
Oh man, well. I haven't been on the internet for most of the day, so I didn't get a chance to see if you got any hot takes about this. But you saw the report this morning about the Lakers in Houston, how they kind of had a deal, but the Lakers just don't want to pay the luxury tax on it or something like that?
Yeah, it was sort of like they didn't want to – the report was that, they had some kind of deal construction where they could have gotten Christian Wood in a John Wall-Russ swap, but they didn't want to take on any extra long-term money. And so, I think, we were kind of debating in Slack, what a deal like that, because they didn't say what the actual deal was, but the deal probably would have been something just salary-wise, THT and, Russ and a first for, Wood and John Wall. And, at that point, the taxes is obviously a concerning thing, but at the same time, I don't know if you're dealing your first-round pick for, that type of marginal upgrade. I think Wood is better than he's shown this season, but yeah.
So I guess do you think it was a good idea that they didn't move forward with it, or do you think that
if it was just for tax reasons, I sort of disagree with it on principle because I don't think that I think they've been concerning themselves with the wrong thing. Caring about the tax is half of how they ended up in this situation in the first place. So if that was the only reason they didn't do that, then yes, I think that that's a mistake. But if it was more just who knows where we're going to be in 5 years? I don't know if I want to give up this pick for, a guy who we haven't seen play in the NBA in a year and has played 40 games the last 3 seasons. Plus, and that's supposed to be a major upgrade on Russ. I sort of understand why you would want to swap. If you felt like the Russ situation was unsalvageable just from a locker room perspective, but he came right back in earlier this week and kind of seemed recommitted. He was doing a lot of the things that you would want him to do in that game against Golden State, played pretty well. I think the vibes really have been fixed a little bit by the trade deadline. Now, we'll see how long that lasts. If Frank Vogel benches him down the stretch of a game again, are we back in the same situation? I don't know. But at least for one game, it looked like sort of the vibes were back in kind of the right direction. And so, yeah, if it was just – so to answer your question, if it was just for taxes, I sort of disagree. But if it was we don't want – if the first-round pick wasn't involved and they turned that down, then that just because of taxes, then that's crazy. But if the first was involved, I sort of get it, even if I can also see the other argument.
We're on the phone right now with the editor-in-chief of Silver Screen and Roll, Harrison Faigen. You can follow him on Twitter at HMFAIGEN. Spelling bee champ. Boom. But also with Russell Westbrook, and as far as the Houston Rockets trade, I really felt as if it was a huge letdown that Westbrook wasn't sent away. What did you think was the best trade that could have been offered at the trade deadline?
You mean involving Russ?
Yes.
I think this is not a particularly creative answer, but I just didn't really see, if it wasn't going to be for Houston and for Wall again, I wasn't really sure I saw what team was a realistic, Russell Westbrook team. Unless Oklahoma City's hey, we want to give him a 1.5 year farewell tour or something like that. I think Oklahoma City is maybe a possibility this offseason. That's the kind of organization that would want to bring him back in, and maybe he's able to sell himself on okay, you're going to come in, you're going to play with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, mentor him, take some of these young guys under their wing, sort of like what Chris Paul did during his 1 year there. But yeah, I'm not sure that because this summer too, the other thing is he's an expiring, and so we've seen this time and time again throughout NBA history. Everybody talks about, this contract's terrible, this guy's way overpaid, but there's no real untradeable 1 year deal because it's over at the end of the year. And then at that point, you have X amount of dollars in cap space. Mm-hmm. But I think right now the problem is that Russ has a $50 million player option almost for next year that he's definitely going to opt into. And so that limits the amount of teams that are willing to they're wait, we're going to pay him, $20 million this year and then $50 million next year. $20 million because he's already gotten half of his salary this year. So the Lakers have already paid that. So, I think from that perspective, like there aren't a lot of teams that are going to want to take him on for like a season and a half. But if it's just one season and it's in the off season after they already whiffed on their contract, on their, targets in free agency, maybe they want to absorb Russ into their cap space, kind of kick that down the road. There's a lot more options for like a Russ trade this summer. So that's also kind of why I understand why the Lakers weren't desperate to do it right now, because they may have better offers on the table this summer. Not that like teams are going to say, hey, we want to give you a difference maker for Russ or anything like that. But the Lakers might be able to get a better player for Russ this summer when he only has 1 year left. So it's not as toxic of a contract. And I believe they will have 2 first-round picks to throw around this summer, which sort of gets you into a more interesting conversation, with the types of players that you could potentially get back for him. And maybe some teams during the offseason when they don't have to worry about rosters and stuff are more willing to deal with okay, we'll give you 3 mediocre players for one kind of, at this point player that is maybe better than the situation he was in last year.
Yeah, and Charles Oakley actually mentioned this back when the Lakers were playing the Knicks. He mentioned something to the effect of how he thinks LeBron James is going to be done with the Lakers. He thinks he's going to try to leave town. And when he said that, I normally don't like to buy into this stuff, especially if it's not from an actual source. But when Charles Oakley said that,
yeah.
I pictured, if you have ever seen The Simpsons, the monorail episode with the monorail guy leaving town as the monorail falls and collapses and he has the bag of money or he has the luggage of money. I was like, that's LeBron James, dude. That is totally LeBron James. And so I'm just thinking, do you think LeBron James is actually, worried? Is there anything the Lakers have to do to persuade him to stay?
Yeah, so as far as persuading him to stay, he's under contract. So, he would have to demand a trade this summer because I believe he's under contract for at least 1 more year with a player option for the next, summer. After that would be summer of 2023. I think he has a player option. So, I'm not that worried about that this summer, but I do think that there's, a very real possibility that, that next summer, if things continue to go like this, that he does leave. Because it's LeBron James. There's another team that will offer him that level of money, and also he doesn't need the money. So, if he wants to go somewhere where he feels like he has a better shot, let's say Cleveland for 1 more title, around that kind of solid young core, I would not be shocked. And to be honest, I think that you're seeing this kind of trickle out into the media now in the way that there's been all this finger pointing back and forth between, the Clutch camp and the Lakers camp and Rob and the anonymous sourcing contradicting what he's saying about consulting them, whatever. I think that relationship has soured a little bit over the last little while. Otherwise we would not be getting these many reports of different people the whole season has basically been people trying to anonymously point the finger at someone else through the media. And, it was with Frank Vogel. It was, back to the front office. It was at LeBron and AD. You wanted this trade versus. So, it's clearly not a super functional work environment. And so I would not be surprised if LeBron tries to kind of exit at some point. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I don't know that that's going to be this summer. Maybe he demands a trade, but that would seem to be kind of a weird thing. I think that it would more likely be the summer of 2023 when he takes off. I don't anticipate either way. I don't think that he's retiring a Laker. I don't think that he is going to finish his career here, barring some sort of God forbid, but some sort of career-ending injury or whatever like that. I don't think that. I think he is going to go somewhere else, whether it's to play with Bronny or whether it's just to leave, kind of this environment.
Yeah, I figure it's gonna be for Bronny no matter what. But you mentioned dysfunction, and I don't know if you get these vibes, but I kind of get these weird vibes from when Jimmy Buss was running things. Do you remember that?
Yeah. No, it's funny. Jeannie, in every single podcast interview she does, she talks about how, she had to get rid of Jim Buss because it's we're firing a coach every couple of years. Oh, we're bringing in different players that don't vibe with the coaches. And it's wait a second, what did you guys just do? What did you just spend the whole summer doing? And then now you're going to fire another coach 2 years later. It's just I don't know. We live in Groundhog Day, and the Lakers are I guess permanently doomed to be in the hands of someone named Jay Buss that's feuding with a sibling or feuding with someone or whatever.
Yeah, I kind of feel maybe because I feel I know it's still a family business and they kind of treat it like a small market team only because other franchises have way more to spend. Do you think the NBA is kind of surpassing the Buss family financially?
In 30 seconds, by the way, because we're about to go to break.
Yeah, I mean, this is not, that's not breaking news. I mean, like that's just reality. I mean, you look at the bus net, just Google Jeannie Buss net worth, and then Google any other NBA owner net worth, and almost all of them, with I think very few like exceptions and a couple of small markets, are going to be way higher than Jeannie Buss's.
So sorry again, Harrison, for cutting you off, but Mark, what was the question again? That
if the NBA is surpassing the Buss family financially, which you did say pretty much that we can, like we could just Google it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can just Google the net worth of any of these of any of the other owners and compare them to Jeannie Buss. And for all of them, this is a toy. And for Jeannie Buss, she has to make a profit because she's not the only stakeholder in this. Like there are, this is where the source of her income is. This is the source of her siblings' income. That revenue that they generate, that is kind of what allows them to live. And I know this is bizarre to say about millionaires. They're obviously not going to starve if the Lakers don't run a profit or anything like that. I'm sure that they have some money in savings, but if they're going to continue to grow their wealth and stuff like that, they need the Lakers to be profitable. They aren't necessarily just going to spend, just to spend, or to spend, an extra $30 million in taxes on an Alex Caruso or something like that. They're just not. They've shown us that they're not an ownership group that's committed to doing things like that. Whereas again, you look across the hallway at Steve Ballmer. You think Steve Ballmer's letting Alex Caruso leave this summer over $30 million? That's couch cushion money to him. And so, I'm not trying to say, the Clippers have not won a title. The Lakers have won a lot. This is not to say the Clippers ownership is definitively better. There's different ways to do it, but they are certainly more willing to spend. And I think that there are a lot of teams that are more willing to spend than the Lakers are, which is not what you would expect based on sort of their, position as these big market bullies.
And I wouldn't expect you to say this, so I'm going to say this. When you're the only NBA team that applies for PPP loans during the middle of a pandemic, that's a sign. That is a sign. And I really felt as if that was the moment where I actually had a time clock in my head of going okay, Jeannie's probably going to sell the team. Not she's still probably going to have a minority stake, but I could see her selling the team as a majority stakeholder for in 5 years.
I remember when that story came out, and I thought that it was very amusing that the amount that they asked for was almost exactly what Avery Bradley's contract was that year when he ended up sitting out the bubble. And I'm like, did they just apply for a pay Avery Bradley to stay home loan? This is the audacity. This is incredible.
Because
I love that everyone, the defense of it is always well, they put it back once the media caught them.
Which they always do.
They should have not done it in the first place,
If they wanted to be more low key, they should have went to those check to go cash places.
Yeah, or at least apply for it under an LLC or something. Don't put Los Angeles Lakers on the form. Come on.
Okay, I'm so glad
you're showing off.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're talking about it because I was afraid after the next Lakers press conference, they were like, no, Harrison Faigen. Just
No, I mean, I criticized them for that at the time. It was an insane thing. And look, good on them for giving it back, but it should not have taken, Kevin Arnovitz writing an article on it for them to be oh yeah, no, we're definitely returning that.
But I think if the Lakers, it looks as if the Lakers are heading to ground zero. It's just, it might be a slower turn. If LeBron is healthy and he returns next year, I think eventually it will be ground zero by the time LeBron leaves the Lakers. How, with the draft picks that's left and however many young players are on this team right now, how long do you think the rebuild process is looking at for the Lakers' future?
Well, I think the question is, who is the next star that wants to come to LA? Because I don't, we've seen with this team that, when there is not a or at least, since Jerry Buss passed away, this team has not had a lot of success at building organically. They tried that for a number of years, and they built up enough assets to make the trade for Anthony Davis, but they really only got turned around because LeBron James decided that he wanted to live in LA and make Space Jam. And, that's not to say that maybe they can't figure it out or can't figure out a way to build organically. We just have never seen them do it. And so, I think they're obviously, AD was set up when he signed that big 5-year extension with no outs as, the next face of the franchise. But who's the next player that's coming here to want to play with AD? I'm not saying that's not happening, but we just don't know who that is. And it's going to depend on that, because I think one thing that we have learned over the course of this season, what we can judge the Lakers on is that AD is not like he is probably a top 15 NBA player, but is more ideally suited as a co-star. He's not a guy that we've seen this now for 10 years or however long he's been in the league. He's not going to single-handedly be able to will a team to title contention because unless you're kind of a Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic-esque like scorer, facilitator, centerpiece of an offense like that, you need a guy to get the ball in your hands, get you rolling downhill, stuff like that. AD is just not that guy. For as incredibly skilled as he is, like he's not on that level as kind of a single offensive fulcrum. And so it's going to take some other superstar ball handler wanting to come play with him. Or, if it extends past the AD era, then it's, what stars want to come team up in LA? Is it Luka in a number of years? Ooh. And, a star player X? Like, I don't know, but I think that it's going to take something like that because, barring some management overhaul, I'm not sure that we've seen anything from this current group to believe that, Kurt Rambis is going to put together this incredible roster of overachieving young players like the Memphis Grizzlies have or something like that.
You said the two worst words I hate to hear with involved with the Lakers, Kurt Rambis. I'm like, oof.
Yeah, I had to bring it up just for you, Mark. I apologize.
I get like panic attacks every time. My biggest fear is he's going to be the coach again. I'm like, no, we tried this already.
No. See, Kurt Rambis is smart enough to not make himself the coach because that means that if you fail, that can be proven. Whereas if you're this like nebulous shadow Rasputin type figure, then you can't get really blamed for anything because there's other people whose names are ostensibly on that decision. Yeah, right now, being the senior advisor, he has like job security for life. He's bulletproof. You can't blame anything on him. So, I would not expect if it makes you feel better, I would not expect Kurt Rambis to like take a role where he has actual accountability.
I would put him up there with the bartender that they hired to scout that one year when it comes to his abilities.
Look, say what you will, Kurt is more qualified than Chaz the bartender. That is an incredibly low bar, but he is more qualified than Chaz the bartender, who apparently like podcasts about the Raiders now. That was the last Chaz update I heard. So,
I got to go on Spotify now. Oh, wait, no, we're not allowed anymore, I think.
So aside from the Lakers and non-Lakers topic, you have a podcast called Rewind and Reconsider with your wife, Mia.
Yeah.
And in the bio, it says, look back at movies from childhood and either cringe or cry. So we just want to know your top 2 cringe-worthy movies of your childhood.
Ooh, that's a good question. There are definitely some that we have watched back that, like, it did not age as well as I was hoping it would. Like, recently, the one that comes to mind recently is Billy Madison. There is, like, that is still a very funny movie, very strong closing act. There are some moments in that movie that, like, just would not get made in 2022 today. And this is radio, so I'm not going to describe them. But there's some aspects of that film that, if they were to reboot it, would kind of be rewritten a little bit or something like that. So, like, that's one of them. I'm trying to think of another one that just did not age well off the top of my head. Yeah, it's not like coming to mind. We've done so many of these episodes that it's like nothing. But yeah, that's a recent one where, that did not age as well as I was hoping it would.
Yeah, I mean, Nudie Magazine Day. I think we can still do that, right? If they're allowed.
No, yeah, I think that one's still allowed. It's just a very bizarre way to start a movie with a grown Adam Sandler chasing, like a penguin around. Yeah, it was a penguin, right?
Yeah.
Around, like saying that it's Nudie Magazine Day, almost running over multiple members of his staff at his mansion. Like, yeah, I mean, Billy Madison, the thing that I told Mia, like, that's a horror movie if it gets made in 2022 of this 27-year-old going back through elementary school and like trying to make friends with the kid, whatever. Like, that's a horror movie, not a comedy.
And then we can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, iTunes, or the iTunes and Apple, I think. But yeah,
I believe, just Apple and Spotify, I think, are the only platforms we're on.
All right. Thank you so much, Harrison. Again, follow him on Twitter at HMFAIGEN. Harrison Faigen. Thank you again.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me, guys.